Try it. Yeah, try N5AUS and it works.
Yeah, AUL is one of our locals, and he's on a net every week, so it just kind of rolls off the tongue. So,
but Lee and I answered anything.
There you go. So before we go to John, let me bring Wayne in, and I'll let him introduce our speaker properly, like I should have done to start with here. Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, thank you, Gavin. It's okay. John Stratton, who is the West. Let me make sure I get this right. The West Coast Director of the ARRL, and pretty much takes care of our business in Oklahoma as well.
Him and Gulf Director.
I'm
West
sorry.
Coast is California. West Gulf.
West Gulf. I apologize for that. Okay, I've never been put on the spot before, John. So here we go.
Well, we'll keep in mind they're picking on you.
Yeah, I know they always do, but you got to have a thick skin. So anyway, he's going to give us some updates on the ARRL, among other topics of information that I'm sure will be very important to us. So, John, let's give a good welcome for John. Go ahead, take it over.
Yeah.
Mark, you promised me a cookie. You can give me a cookie.
I will get you a cookie. You're
okay.
Darn right.
Okay, thanks for letting Lee and I come north of the border, at least virtually this time. Lee Cooper, W5LHC, is the Vice Director for the West Gulf Division. And Lee is also a key member of the Emergency Management Communications Committee, which we'll talk about a little bit later. I'll let Lee talk about that. Mark gave me a whole list of topics that will take us about 3 days to cover. The question is, we'll go in whatever order you all want to. There's nothing formal about what Lee and I are going to do. If you've got questions, raise your hand. We'll talk about anything you want to talk about, or when Mark gets tired of us, he'll disconnect us. But Mark, I think you said you've got some new members in the club, and you wanted us to talk about how people join if they're not members.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
There are two easy ways to join. One is, Mark, can I use the screen?
You got it. You're shared. Yes.
Okay, let me bring up a screen here.
While John's doing that, let me make a reminder for everyone to please mute their microphones unless you're actually wanting to talk.
Okay, one way is you can go to the ARRL website. There's always a big join button or donate button on the right-hand side of the screen. If you click on that big join button, it takes you to a membership screen, and you can join. You can become a regular member. You can join for, I think, 3 years at a time, or you can become a life member. We'll be happy to take your life membership fee. The other way, which is more beneficial to SCARS, is instead of joining directly on the website, is to join through the club. If you join through the club, let me turn this thing off. Then the club gets a benefit. If you are not yet a member of the ARRL and you join through SCARS, SCARS gets $15 with a $49 membership fee. We do that as an incentive to promote clubs. The clubs are the backbone of the league. So we are trying to find a way to support the clubs. That's one of the ways we do it. If you're an existing member and you renew your membership, do it through the club, and the club gets $2. It's not a huge amount of money, but I don't think anyone in the club is going to turn it down. If you join directly through the website, and Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, it does not recognize that you're a member of a club and will not give credit to the club. So talk to any officer in the club, and they'll get you the forms you need, and you can join through the club. Because we'd much rather have the money go to the club. Lee, am I right about that? Okay. It's one of the questions Mark asked me to address is, I think most of the people on the screen have been in the amateur radio for a long time and have been members, but why do we want to join? And I'm going to, again, with your permission, Mark, put up a screen.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Okay. We're going to do a slide deck because I want you to see something that's important about what we do. By the way, I forgot to mention that the section manager for Oklahoma is Kevin, and Mark Conklin, your section emergency coordinator. We're a nonprofit corporation headquartered in Connecticut. And yes, we can argue we should be out of Connecticut. Lee and I both agree with that, but that will take some time. But we've got 158,000 members as of the end of December, 1,700 of whom are from Oklahoma. And here's something that if you join or if you renew, isn't very clearly set out in the membership information. We can't afford to write letters and mail things to the membership all the time. We're a $15 million a year budget. We have $35 million in reserved assets that are invested, and we'll come to that in a minute. But those assets, that investment portfolio is not available for operational use. So that $15 million budget is what we run on every year and provide all the programs. The easiest way and the least expensive way for us to communicate with everyone in the league is through email. But the West Gulf, Texas, and Oklahoma have about 12,500 members. Only 8,800 of our members have given us email, or more accurately, given us permission to use the email addresses. That means we cannot talk to a third of the membership. I think in Oklahoma, you've got 1,700 members, and we've got about, I think, Lee, if I'm correct, 11 or 1,200 for emails. So if you renew and your email is marked as no, please change it, because we can't keep the membership up to date as to what we're doing without that email address. And by the way, I'm talking about budget. Because of C-19, the league is going to run a deficit of $1 million this year. That's 2020. We project, based upon operational expenses, that we will be short $1 million for 2021. By 2022, we expect to be back in the black. But every dollar we can save by making it easier to communicate helps keep us operationally alive. Now, and I'm going to answer some of the other questions, but for those who may be new and don't know how we function, I'm going to go through this. And Mark, if you think most people know how this works, tell me to stop.
I think skim through it good. You know, just
I'm just going to go
everybody
real
thinks
fast.
they know it.
Stop me. The rest of you stop me if you want. But there are two operational levels for the ARRL. One is the board of directors, and this lists everything we do. We set policy, we handle the financing, we handle relationships with the states and with the federal government, which I can assure you is a lot of fun. The second level is section managers, field service. These two levels are completely independent. Although I keep telling Kevin that he has to do what I tell him or Lee tells him, Kevin always hangs up on us, trust me. But they are truly independent. The section managers operate as an independent unit and report directly back to headquarters. The two levels work together, obviously, but they are independent. And if you ask me why that was created, we're going to have to dig up Clarence Tuska or Maxim, but it's been that way for 60, 70 years. You've got 15 directors. I'm one, and a third of the directors are elected every 5 years. There are also 15 vice directors, which is the position league holds. There's a reason that the league created vice directors. It's so that at all times, the management of the league and amateur radio is controlled by the members. Whoever sits in that boardroom has been elected by the members. So if the aliens will come take me away or the FBI, depending on what's happening on any given day, there's a vice director, in this case, Lee, who would become director. That vice director will have been on the board, will have experience and know how the system works. So the intent is there's never a gap in leadership. And whoever's sitting in those chairs has been elected by you as the members. These are the divisions for the league. There are 15. The three largest are West Gulf, Southeastern, and the Southwestern Division in California. We're talking about membership and funding for a second. These are the 5 categories of how the league obtains money to support amateur radio. Membership only provides 47% of our operating expenses. The rest of the income that keeps us supporting amateur radio comes from publications, books, the magazines, comes from advertising, comes from donations and investment returns. Donations and investment returns are not something we can guarantee. It comes down to the courtesy of the members and how well the stock market performs. And a note on advertising. If you subscribe to any magazine around the country, you will note that those magazines over the past 20 years have become thinner. There's less advertising. People are changed, manufacturers and or not manufacturers, but all people who advertise are changing how they advertise. So the amount of advertising decreases, and in any organization that helps pay for the magazines. The digital advertising has begun to change in the past few years also. It's beginning to lessen. So a decrease in advertising for us in the magazines or anything else we publish puts a financial burden on the rest of the league. And you will see over the next year, the league will be changing a lot of its operating policies to increase revenue. One of those things you will see is that the advertising in QST will probably change. Actually, QST, NCJ, QEX. For the past 106 years, the league has never permitted any advertising in any of the magazines except direct amateur radio related merchants. There is a motion before the board that currently has, I believe, 14 votes out of 15 that we expect therefore to pass. It will permit staff at headquarters to seek and accept third-party advertising. What that advertising will look like, Lee and I don't know. We trust staff to make certain it doesn't include the things we don't want to see. But because of declining revenue in advertising, particularly affected by C-19, it's another source of revenue so that we can maintain the programs we have and we don't lose, we don't have to raise dues. This is just a partial list of the benefits of being a member. And I'm not going to go through all of these. You can ask questions about any of them. There are 2 really important ones in this. One is spectrum defense. For those of you who are new to the league and not yet members, why do you want to join? Because if you don't, there's no one else but the league to protect spectrum. There is no other organization anywhere in the United States that works to maintain the spectrum HF or VHF or UHF that we have. For those of you who are active, that point has been brought home in our fight with the FCC over 3.3 to 3.5, which Congress authorized the FCC to auction off for 5G. We fought it, we lost, but there have been other instances where we have prevailed, and we're still working with the FCC right now to get part of that frequency back. The other big thing is insurance. SCARS has club liability insurance. Am I right, Mark? That's a long pause.
No,
Yes.
I thought my
Yes,
mute was
we
on. We have equipment policy,
Okay.
policy insurance.
There's a liability policy the club can obtain through the ARRL that covers the club whenever it ever holds an event, such as holding the Hamfest in Oklahoma City or any place else. Or if you hold just a gathering, it covers what you do. The other key benefit is the individual replacement insurance. It is true replacement level insurance. If you buy a used Yaesu and the aliens carried off, the insurance company will pay you current retail replacement value. It's the best insurance program we've seen in the country. We're going to skip through all this, but I want to point out that people ask, where does my money go? We only have 87 employees right now. We have 2 buildings that we own. We lease one for the warehouse and the shipping. The 2 buildings we own are the headquarters, and that's a 1968 building, by the way, and W5LHC. So let me turn that screen off. Okay. So if you've got any questions about how we function and what we do, or where any of the money goes and what we're trying to do, talk to us at the end, or ask questions now. And talking about membership, let me tell you that if we were in person, Lee and I always have door prizes. Since we can't see any of you, be in the room with any of you, we can't do that. But what we did at the Oklahoma City Ham Fest when we were working with Mark, and what we're going to do here, is that if anyone in the club renews their membership within the next 7 days, which is by next Saturday, or joins, we'll send out a door prize. And Lee promises to make it a winning lottery ticket, but I'm not sure what it will be. So if anyone in the club joins or renews, if you signed up 2 weeks ago and you renew again, it tacks on to the end of your membership. So just send an email to me or to Lee, and I'll give you those email addresses at the end, and just say SCARS renew, and we will get you a book, cap, winning lottery ticket, or something of the nature. One of the things that Mark asked us, Lee and I talked about, is what's new. One of the things that's new is we have a new chief executive officer. As most of you know, Dave Sumner has been chief executive officer, I think, since Moses, but he retired in 2016. We've gone through 2 chief executive officers in the meantime, Tom Gallagher and Dr. Nickel. In September, or in August, the board met in Denver to select a new CEO. The person that was selected by the board is David Minster, NA2AA. He's out of New Jersey, which we try not to hold against him. He's a very active ham. He's a DXer contester. He is extremely enthusiastic about amateur radio and extremely enthusiastic about now being CEO. There are a lot of new programs and things that the league will be doing. A lot of those are going to be the result of the board has someone now that will work with us. The ideas are coming from the board and coming from David. If any of you go up on YouTube and look at the DX Engineering podcast, you can search for one, and he was up there, what, Lee, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
I think it's right over Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And there's, he was on another podcast. It would be worth, it's about 28 minutes or 24 minutes. It's worth looking at because you get a sense of his enthusiasm. We think it's going to work out real well. The second major change at headquarters is a shift in the focus of the league to fix a problem that we've had for 20 years. For the past 20 years, headquarters has not paid any real attention to field service and emergency communications. A year ago, the board decided that had needed to stop. And the board created a position known as Director of Emergency Management. That person reports directly to the CEO. And a committee was formed, the Emergency Management Committee, to provide guidance to the CEO and to the new EMCOM director. That committee will become one of the permanent committees, probably in July. Lee, do you want to talk about the committee and what it's been doing so far? And tell them who the new emergency director is?
Sure, be happy to there, John. By the way, if I can back up just a second, because you kind of passed over, but I want to reemphasize. When we look at the benefits package, as John pointed out, yes, we get the magazine, yes, we get access to Logbook of the World, yes, we get other memberships, we have the insurance. But by and far, and there's no better reason, no number one reason to become a member of the league in the spectrum defense. As John said, there is constantly under attack. We saw a couple of years ago where the French were wanting to actually invade 2-meter band and use it for French aeronautical and World War Aeronautical. We're seeing it now with the 5G and automotive industries want our frequencies because they're now building all these self-driving vehicles and everything. We've got to sit there and put that number one, because without spectrum, we don't have contesting, we don't have YAG-tune, we don't have anything else. We're gone and stuff. So that's the number one reason. MCOM is one of the other things that tends to also help us because they recognize our value. They see how we respond to so many different emergencies and stuff. But it's an area that we have been trying to improve upon in the league. As a past section manager and EC, I've known that we haven't always had the most strong support out of headquarters. And this is just a very, very important area. Here in the West Gulf Division, as you guys know, we've gone through a lot of stuff over the years. We put out a really good training matrix program. We sat there, we put in some rapid response teams. We've done some things. The MCOM committee, now that I'm on it, and we actually have a West Gulfer, Paul Gilbert, KE5ZW, who is also a section manager here in the West Gulf Division, is now that director of emergency management that John pointed out and stuff. And so Paul and myself and John and stuff, we have been working to maybe put more focus. As you guys know, we've been making some changes over the years. For the first time a couple of years ago, we actually came out with a training plan. It had a matrix with it, although it was nowhere near as aggressive as the West Gulf Division training plan. It was a start. So we're working on that. We're constantly looking, we need to do some upgrades. It's been a couple of years, it's time to upgrade that. So we've been working on that. We've been working on our reporting systems, looking to see other ways that we can sit there and build up our MCOM capabilities, our MCOM response. We've been very lucky this year in many ways. So you sit there and you look at, it seems like one hurricane after another hit us this last year and stuff. And then other events that have gone on, from wildfire to whatever. We've been lucky. In fact, we've actually been able to sit there and work through that. Pretty much we haven't had another Puerto Rico type event, if you will, or another Katrina type event per se. So we've been lucky, but we want to make sure we're prepared. And so and it's one reasons kind of John twisted my arm to do this, is so that I could work with the league, with the committee, and help bring our MCOM facility up. So you'll always see some changings coming. There's a number of things that are on our table. We're going to talk about some more of them at the board meeting, but I think you guys will see some improvements, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more. We'll be reaching out to you guys. Those of you who are in MCOM, if that's your thing, we want your input. What's working? What's not working? What would you like to see us focus on? Maybe take a little bit more proactive role in providing what needs to be done in the sections in order to sit there and be effective in their MCOM response. So that's going to be my focus, and work with you guys, work with the league, and work with Paul in order to sit there and make that happen. Back to net, John.
Let me make a point that Lee kind of skipped over. The league operates, besides having the board, it operates through committees. One committee is administration and finance. One is programs and services. Up until we formed the EMD committee, the emergency management committee, all emergency management was handled by programs and services. That is not what it used to be. 15 years ago, emergency management, about 20 years ago, actually, emergency management had its own group committee that paid attention to it and supported it. They combined contesting and DXing with that committee, and as a result, DX and contesting took over, and emergency communications has not been of any interest to headquarters. And that, as Lee's pointed out, is now changing. And let me point out something else Lee also glossed over. Lee's on that committee for a particular reason. These committees, of the 15 directors, the rules are every director must be on a committee. The vice directors, the 15, are not historically been assigned to committees. We changed that 2 years ago because the talents on the back row are amazing. Lee was specifically put on the Emergency Management Committee because of his expertise in emergency communications and because of his background as South Texas section manager. Paul Gilbert wasn't selected in a day. It took 18 months for the league conducting a national search to find someone with the background in emergency communications to take the position of Director of Emergency Management. The members of the Emergency Management Committee are directors and vice directors from every division that's affected by hurricanes, which basically is the southern United States. So Lee didn't point out how important it is he's on that committee or that why it's important that Paul was selected. But you will see changes. And I'll make one other point. Lee said that one of the reasons people pay attention to us is because of emergency communications. David Woolweaver coined the phrase that if we didn't have emergency communications, that Congress and the FCC would treat us as electronic stamp collectors because of QSL cards. When we go to Congress or we go to the FCC, why they think we're important is because we do provide emergency communications. It's not all we do. It's not that every member has an interest in it, but it is one of the two reasons that we exist. If you look at 97.1, paragraph B, it says we're here to provide emergency communications. 47% of the people who obtain a new license do so for one reason. They want to participate in emergency communications or public service. That has been ignored by the league for a long time. That's the reason the committee's been formed. We're going to start paying attention to that. But when we try and work on legislation or stop bad legislation, the entry card we have in talking to either the Oklahoma legislature, the Texas legislature, or Congress is that we provide emergency communications. What would be surprising is how many of the people who have been elected to office have had experience with just that. They were in public office before, or they were in an area affected by an unfortunate event, and they remember the amateur radio came out and provided needed services. So it is extremely important both for new membership and for keeping our, shall we say, political power at Congress and state legislature. One of the other new things which hasn't occurred but will occur in this new year is that as a result of the efforts of the West Gulf, the league is going to hire a club coordinator. The title may change, but the responsibility of that person will be to develop and work with new programs for clubs and to work with the clubs to see that all the clubs have whatever resources they have to function, to attract new members. The clubs have been ignored, Mark, for at least 10, 12 years.
Yep.
If a club, any of your officers were to call headquarters and ask for help before now, people would be polite. You wouldn't get any help. We used to have programs and materials that we put out to the field with the clubs to help the clubs maintain membership and to get new members. That was abandoned, unfortunately, a long time ago. That is going to change. The new person will probably come on board before July. That person will actually have two roles. One is they're going to work with the new EMD committee and the section managers to help them and work with the clubs. So we'll get you news when it happens. One of the things that we're going to try to do this year is to develop a new operating event. Everyone had great fun with national parks in the air. We haven't come up with a program yet, but we're going to try and develop a new operating event. And we're going to have a lot of promotions tied to Cycle 25, Sunspot Cycle 25. It's beginning to come alive. The ability to communicate across town is beginning to improve. And because it is the beginning year of Cycle 25, you'll see promotions tied to that from the league. What they look like, we won't know until the board meeting because the CEO hadn't told us yet, but we'll be working on it. Do y'all have questions about anything at this point besides how soon will Lee and I leave?
When's lunch?
Let me ask you a question about something that Lee and I covered. We told you we're going to open up QST and the magazines to third-party advertising. Do any of you have any concerns about that? Someone suggested barbecue and breweries. Well, that may be possible. So I'm looking at chat. Someone made that comment.
Well, I think my concern, it's not really a concern, but my thought is that because we don't know what that's going to pertain, and obviously it would all depend on what type of advertising that you're planning on, that we would have to wait and see. I mean, obviously we would want it to be morally sound, and I believe that it will be. But because we don't know
Oh, Wayne, you're taking all the fun out of the advertising, but go ahead.
Because we don't actually know what kind of advertising it is. I mean, we can understand if you're going to start putting car ads and stuff like that in there, but so anyway, that's kind of my thought. We'll just have to wait and see.
We have advertising guidelines in place that would prevent the immoral ads, but we don't know. We have 158,000 members, and the average age is well over 55. So we have a demographic that is attractive to certain advertisers. The fact that we do have an attractive demographic does not mean they will advertise with us. We don't know. I mean, the one favorite advertiser that everyone wants when we bring this up is Harbor Freight. Actually, David Minster, the CEO, mentioned that when we were discussing this, that he was going to make a run at Harbor Freight to see if they would advertise with us. We don't know. The fact that we want their advertising doesn't mean they're going to advertise. But because we need to replace advertising that we're losing from amateur radio advertisers that are going out of business, that are reducing the ads, if you look at QST January 2020 and look at the most recent one you received, look at how many people are not advertising and look at how many advertisers reduced the amount of advertising. So we need to replace that because we do not want to raise the cost of being a member. C19 has affected something that's obvious to all of us, and that is Hamfest. They have disappeared. I think, how many of you have not heard about Hamcom closing? That closing may be permanent. The Greater Houston Hamfest canceled in March. Green Country canceled. CPAC is canceled. Every known Hamfest of any size is canceled since January. And it is unlikely, this current speculation amongst those who are trying to organize Hamfest is it may not be, it'll be 2022 before there are any more in-person Hamfest. It's my understanding, if any of you have better information I do, that Mark Conklin and group are trying to see if they can move Green Country to sometime in the fall. But no one knows how well distributed the two vaccines will be by then, so it may not be possible. But Hamvention is officially still on. The running bet is it will cancel. Because if you look at the schedule for the vaccine, they're not going to be through the third wave of vaccines by the time we get to Hamvention. So we don't know how they can hold it. They may try, but because of the cost of running that Hamfest or any Hamfest, they probably will cancel it and move it back into 2022. Orlando, where we were going to hold this year the national convention, canceled. The national convention will be in 2022. So, how many of you are tickled to pay a $35 fee to the FCC to renew your license? Oh, come on. Someone's got to raise your hand and tell me you're tickled to pay the federal government $35. Lee, we need to revisit why you were a vice director. That $35 fee ended, what, 32 years of a free pass. Prior to 1988, there was a license fee applied.
You got
I'm
it
sorry.
there, but it didn't get it there.
Let's
sorry.
remember to have our
What
mics
does this
muted.
look like
Well,
on the original one on the run?
This is the way it should look,
Oh, okay.
Hang on.
but this is the one. It cut it off.
Mike,
Okay.
They're done in the same run.
Mike,
Put that in the
you might
pile.
want to mute your mic. You might want to mute your mic, Mike.
Mike, SOS, please mute your mic.
Prior to 88, there was a license fee on amateur radio. When Congress, but a problem developed with the FCC. The FCC, like every government agency, decided it didn't have enough money. It wanted more. So it started raising the license fees, not just for amateurs, for broadcasters, for everybody. And when it did that, it was sued. And it lost because the courts ruled that the fees that they were wanting to charge were not based on cost. The FCC is limited to charging fees solely based on the cost of providing the service. So they backed up and they tried it again. They raised another fee. They were sued. They lost. Congress got tired of that and in 1988 passed legislation that revised the right of the FCC to charge fees. In the 88 legislation, we were still included as being charged a fee. The difference was instead of the FCC setting the fees, Congress set all the fees. The House passed a version of that bill, the Senate passed a version, and they didn't match. When you have bills in Congress that do not match, but they've been approved by each House, there's a conference committee. The conference committee tries to work out the differences. One of the congressmen on the conference committee was fortunate for us to have a ham on his staff. And as the story goes, as he's walking down the hall to go to the conference committee meeting, he's tucked his head into the corner office and asked the ham, he says, is there anything I ought to do with regard to this bill? What should I look for or change? And the ham thought for a moment, he said, sir, take the fees off amateur radio. He did. He went down, and as a result, we were taken out of the 88 bill and had no license fees since 88. So Congress decided in 2018 to get out of the fee setting business. So it passed what is referred to as the Ray Baum Act. Ray Baum is one of those ugly abbreviations for a much longer name. And Congress gave back to the FCC the ability to set fees, or in fact, the responsibility to do it. And again, the fees are based on cost. So the FCC sent out a notice that we're going to do this and we're proposing fees. They proposed a $50 fee on amateur radio. We opposed it. Thousands of our members that once we sent out the notice opposed the fee on multiple grounds. The FCC did something it normally doesn't do. It made a decision in almost record time. If we and other amateur radio interests have rulemaking petitions pending before the FCC. They've been there for what, 8 years, I think. Am I right, Lee? The oldest one's about 8 years old. And the FCC hadn't ruled on. This one, it ruled on quickly. And it may be because it has nothing to do with the wireless bureau that governs amateur radio. The section of the FCC that's pushing the bill and trying to set fees is the budgetary division. So they came back and lowered the fees for almost every license class. Broadcasters for GMRS for us, and it's at 35. All the arguments that we made, the league made, and that the members made, that we provide a valuable and very free service, fell on deaf ears. No one cared whether or not we provided the service. They need the money. They're short on budget too. So it's not just us, everyone got hit with a fee. So we're stuck with a $35 fee, but the good news is we went through 32 years without one. Anyone got any questions about that or complaints?
My name is Matthew, W5MSL. I'm a kind of a youth. I've talked to a lot of other youths in my kind of group because I talk to a whole bunch nationwide, and they really are expressing the concern that $35 fee, that's why they were very, very, very against it. At least the $50 fee, definitely. They were very against it because just the price for young people when they're getting their license, $35 When you get your technician, then you go upgrade to your general, that's another 35, then you get to your extra. So as myself, I've tried to get people licensed, and one of the good things about it in the past was, well, it's free. You just have to study and actually have the knowledge. So I definitely have a I have a concern that it could start limiting some of the youth coming into the program, but I'm glad that it did get downgraded from 50 to 35.
Matt, the argument you made is very valid. It's one of the arguments the league made, that if you've been a member for 50 years, the fee may not mean as much to you. It actually does, because we have a lot of members who are on a fixed income, and an extra $35. Of course, it's only every 10 years, but still it's $35. May not be within their budget. But for getting new members of any age, particularly youth, you're correct. In chart, they pay a fee to take their exam, depending on which VEC they're going through. And then $35, it can be as much as $50 just to get a license. And to many members, Matt, you're correct, that is an impediment. But that argument was made not by us, but was made by other hams. The FCC didn't listen. How we deal with that, how we get around it, we don't know yet. But we're going to have to find, we can't make the fee go away. But if we can find a way that lessens the cost to being a new member, we're going to take a look at it, but we don't have an answer yet. And thanks, by the way, for working with youth and trying to get new members in. The league needs them.
I have a question.
Yes, Danny.
When is this fee supposedly to take effect?
Starting this year.
When this year?
The FCC hasn't told us.
All right, thank you.
They haven't issued directions to everyone as to when they're going to start initiating, but we were told it's this year, but we just don't know when yet.
Okay, Robert, real quick.
Yes, sir.
The $35 fee for getting your license, but I have not heard whether they're going to impose that on upgrades too. Do you know anything about that?
Yes, we asked that question. The FCC council, we have David Zadal asked the FCC, and they said yes. If you upgrade from a tech to a general to an extra, there'll be a $35 fee. We argued that shouldn't happen either, but we lost that argument too.
Okay, so let's say theoretically a guy comes in, he's a tech, and he goes all the way to extra. Is that just one $35 fee? Or are they going to charge per license level?
One fee.
Okay.
Because he even though he took the exams, he's applying for only one license class. So it'd be one upgrade fee.
Okay, thank you.
If they really, really come back and try and impose two, you should expect we'll be in Congress, asking Congress to override that.
John, we got a question on YouTube that says, why the fee? Why is the fee being added? I guess the answer I see is because Congress said so, but do you have any?
Like I said, before 1988, every holder of any license to operate any radio system, satellites, broadcast, TV, amateur radio, paid a license fee. In 88, the Congress took away from the FCC the ability to set the fee, and we were excluded because we were just smart enough to ask. But Congress got tired of setting the fees. There were a lot of complaints from the FCC. The fees were set too low. They weren't complaining about us, they were complaining about the other fees. So Congress said, had enough. You go back to setting the fees, but you must base them on cost. So the FCC came out and proposed a set of fees. When we read the original notice of proposed rulemaking, all the fees were too high, and what we suspected was they were doing that just to lower them. There was a provision in Section 9B of the Act that granted the FCC the ability to waive the fees. Part of the argument we made to the FCC when we filed an objection was that they should exercise the right under 9B to waive the fees on amateur radio. They didn't do it. So why? It's a budgetary matter. Congress instead of raising the money for the FCC, was going to let the FCC do it. So it goes straight to the bottom line. We made the argument, if you're going to collect fees from us, at least earmark the fees to be used for enforcement. Lost. No division of the FCC gets to use the fees. It goes into the general budget to be used any way the FCC commissioners want. So it's not, we're not the only ones being disadvantaged, so is every other license holder. So the best reason I can give you is they wanted the money.
John, would it also not make sense that probably most of the licensees in all of the services could make the argument that they're public service, you know, whether it's public safety, whether it's satellite, you know, all of them could make the argument that, hey, we're serving the public.
I think a lot of them did. In the sense of a government agency making the argument, it's very true, they are public service. But the FCC ignored it across the board.
Right.
I mean, even if you look at GMRS licenses, you can go buy these things, you know, Cabela's. It doesn't make sense to charge a fee on those Class and Class 6, and no one even applies for the license anymore. But they did anyway. It's pure bottom line budget. Every agency's short on money, and they're not going to pass up the chance to essentially charge a tax. They shouldn't, but they did.
John, if I can ask you a question about,
Surely.
while we're talking about fees, ARRL through the VE has charged a fee for years. And of course, you know, some of us have gone to the Laurel exam because we didn't have to charge the people testing a fee. Wouldn't it be better for ARRL is, you know, to try to gain more membership and to get, you know, a better public image for them not to charge, you know, since it can be done without having a fee?
It could be that it has been under discussion, Lee. There has, one of the changes you're going to see at the league is not going to be very obvious immediately. The league was, to be frank, poorly run before 2016. The board has been arguing for over 10 years that we should go to a completely computerized testing system, which is basically what Laurel has done. The board's wishes were not observed. That's going to change. We are making a major effort with a new, I think that all the IT work is going to be done outside the league instead of inside. But you're going to end up seeing that the league's VEC operations will become fully computerized like Laurel's. Should it be free? It's a reasonable argument that it should be, but we need to look at the bottom line. The fee, we are the largest VEC in the group of VECs in the country. The amount of money, Lee, correct me if I'm wrong on the budget item, the amount of money derived by the FCC, I'm sorry, by the ARRL from the VEC fees is about $475,000 per year. And that's real money. It goes to the bottom line. If we change those fees or eliminate them, we have to find a replacement in the budget for that. And that is something that the Administration and Finance Committee and the new CEO are looking at. Would it bring more people into ARRL VEC testing? Yes, I think it would. Would it get more members in amateur radio? Probably not. People who want to get a license are going to get a license without regard to the $14 or $15 fee. Would they be more likely to use the ARRL if it were free? Yes. So the suggestion that it would be beneficial, whether it's for public relations or for attracting more members, I think has validity. And it is being considered a league, but I don't think we're going to see a decision one way or the other until probably fall, maybe as far out as a year, because before we can make a decision as to what we're going to do, we first have to fix the program. We've got to be able to get to a fully computerized operation. Once that happens, it's going to be a decision will be made. It's a good question, though. If you looked at ARRL News, the FCC, for reasons we don't really understand, have proposed to add as many as 6 new VECs. We haven't gotten an answer as to why they want to do that. We have enough now throughout the country to satisfy the demand for exams, but It's the FCC running around bumping into walls as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see where that goes.
John, the best thing I can say on it is that, you know, we've had a lot of members that have upped their class simply because they were allowed to take a test without costing them an extra amount of money. And so we've had people increase their, you know, their classification sometimes in the same time they got their technician license. And the other thing, 475,000, I kind of, you know, look at that as, well, like Laurel isn't making any money at all on it. So are they, you know, they obviously aren't losing anything.
The difference between the two groups is the Laurel Club is not responsible for protecting amateur radio and running a national program. They can afford to do it for free. Can we afford to do it for free? That's an actual, that is being discussed for the reasons you pointed out, Lee. It could be used to encourage people to upgrade their licenses, which is what the league wants everyone to do. But the answer to that argument is not going to occur until after we fix a very broken VEC testing system. But there are those within the league who've made the same argument, within the board who've made the same arguments you have. But as the bottom line, can we find a replacement for 475? Probably if we work at it. But that is an illustration of the thinking of the league before 2019. The reason I pegged 2019 as a change date is that's when control of the board shifted. There were people on the board that had been there for a long time that were, say, not member-centric, member-responsive. 4 new positions changed in that year. We've now picked up, Lee, one new director now. So there are 5 new directors in the room that have, shall we say, a more modern view. But in the past, there was no thinking of, can we do this for free? Can we make it a member benefit where we can offer it? That thinking is changing. But it will take time to change it, because for everything we change, if it's a monetary item, we've got to replace it. So that's the reason we're changing programs. One of the reasons we're looking at picking up third-party advertising. So we have a revenue source that will permit us to change cost on another side.
John?
Watch it for a year. You'll see a change.
John?
Lee?
If I may belabor a point a little bit on that, the other thing that would help is that 700,000 hams in the country, 157,000 members. If we could get the other 500,000 people to join the league, there's a lot we could offer for free.
Lee's got a point. I mean, if you think about amateur radio, 158,000 members, we are, I think we're a little bit larger than Midland, Texas. On Monday morning when everyone shows up for it. We control the largest block of free frequencies, I think, in the world, outside the military and the government. We don't pay a dime for it. But we're a city, that's it. And we're having to deal with people like AT&T, Verizon, General Motors, Tesla, who have billions of dollars to spend. And I think it's what Will Rogers said, buy real estate because they're not making any more of it. Same thing applies to the frequency allocations. There aren't anymore. Everyone's fighting over the same limited number of frequencies, and they want ours. So,
John,
sir.
John, we have a question from Jim James, KG5BIM. His question is, where does the billions the FCC gets for auctioning of the 5G frequency go?
Into the general treasury. The general treasury of the FCC and the federal government. It is not specifically allocated for any particular program.
Okay, John.
Sir.
So kind of switching gears here real quick in the time we have left. So SCARS is a special services club. Can you kind of touch on that and explain what that is and why it's important that we should maintain that?
There are a long list of benefits that will take us more than what 2 or 3 minutes we got left. But there are specific benefits the league offers to a special services club. And I can get you and distribute to all the members. It is, can you operate as a ham club without being a special services club? You can. Would you receive the same level of services, special services? No. And I can bring that list up when we go through it if you want to in detail. But and actually, I'll get you the list and we can go through it. And I'm going to interrupt something because Mark, you asked me to talk about the volunteer monitor program before we got off the air.
Yeah, I know you've got a hard out here at 10:30 for other reasons, but yeah, if you touch that one, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'll run over a little bit, and again, I'll answer any questions if I have to. I have to leave in just a little bit, but Lee can say. The volunteer monitoring program replaced the OOs. The concern is
what's an OO for the new guys?
Lee, you want to explain what an OO is? It's an official observer.
So yeah, I was going to say, I'm so sorry, I was on another screen there.
Okay.
So you guys know the OO, the official observers. One of the benefits, one of the things that we have been blessed with over the years is we're self-policing. So by sitting here and promising that we would sit there and manage our own and keep everything on the up and level, then they said, okay, well then we're not going to get that involved, but you guys do your own thing. So the OO program was created. It actually had two basic reasons. Number one, everybody looks at it on the negative side is that they're out there looking for the bad operators and trying to sit there and do something about it. But at the same time, we were also looking for the good operators and sit there and letting people know, hey, heard you on the net the other night, did a fantastic job, keep it up and stuff. So they were also supposed to be patting the back and stuff. So the OO program, up until the FCC made the changes last year, was just that. It was a group of amateurs that were dedicating their time to monitor the bands and basically self-police ourselves.
The FCC killed the program. It was created at their request originally, and they terminated it. At the same time, the FCC, we were talking about money, they terminated 21 field officers. Those field officers existed to help with enforcement, not just for amateur radio, for everybody. So they no longer had the people in the field to work on enforcement. The suggestion was that although they terminated OO, if we created the volunteer monitor program, they agreed to do what they haven't done in the past, which is be more aggressive about enforcement. So we have about, I think, roughly 200 volunteer monitors. Officially, no one knows who they are. Unofficially, I think a lot of us know who they are. The reason that the intent was to keep their existence or their name secret is so no one could pick on them. Riley Hollingsworth, who used to be head of enforcement for the FCC, was hired by the league to set the program up and run it. He still remains an employee and in charge of it. There has been a recent development that's very positive for the volunteer monitor program. There's a ranch south of Abilene, about 30 miles south of Abilene, called the Texana Ranch. You can look them up on the web. They are a hunting ranch, but they also hold off-road desert racing races. I think at least once or twice a year. In order to communicate over that large ranch with all the racers, they thought it would be neat to have a radio. They bought one. They bought a repeater system, and they had it programmed in the 2-meter band, right in the midst of the amateur radio frequencies. We know because the volunteer monitors caught it, and we have recordings of them operating during a race in the 2-meter band. Those recordings were turned in by volunteer monitors to Laura Smith, who is the contact person with the FCC. And we, the West Gulf, worked with Riley. What occurred is rare. Laura Smith sent out, you need to stop doing this letters. Very sharply worded letters to Texana Ranch and to the Desert Racing Association saying you may not use amateur frequencies. You might expect they both denied they were doing it. And yes, she knows we've got the recordings. But this is the first time that we've been able to get the FCC to actually come out and go after someone who's interfering with amateur radio. A set of letters went out about a week ago from Riley on behalf of the league to every radio store we eliminated Oklahoma, just Texas, that said, by the way, you may not sell amateur radios or repeater systems that operate within the amateur radio bands, because we, the league, and the FCC will come visit if you do. We have never been permitted, we, the league, have never been permitted to participate in enforcement before. So it's a really good sign for the future. No guarantees, but it's the first time the FCC has done this. And I'm going to apologize. I'm just going to have to leave in just a few minutes. Do we have any more questions before I have to go on any subject?
John, I'll put a link to Riley's. He did a deal on W5KUB that talked about that VM program really detailed. If anybody's interested in that, I got a lot of good information out of that as well. I'll put that in the chats of both.
Yeah, give everyone a link to that.
Yep. Someone
in chat mentioned scholarships. The league maintains the ARRL Foundation. It runs on donations. It has about $6 million in funds. Those funds were given to it for either supporting special projects or scholarships. And I believe the scholarships for the current academic year were, the application period ended in December. But we give out every scholarship that we can. I think, 120, 150 some oddly every year. And those scholarships are limited to those who have amateur radio licenses. Now, I know Lee and I have not been that brilliant during the past hour, so we probably haven't answered everyone's questions. Again, if you renew, if anyone renews through the club or not through the club or joins the ARRL between now and next Saturday, then there will be a door prize. And no, I don't think it's going to be a winning lottery ticket, but you never know. Depends on whether Lee will do that. Did the screen show up for the email addresses?
Yep.
Okay, let me make that a little bigger.
John, I have a suggestion for you.
Sure.
You want to get the other 500,000 people. Why don't you try every year doing a quote, extra campaign for getting people in, and for 30 or 60 days, drop the membership to $35.
That's actually a good suggestion. And part of one of the programs for the new year will be that, make that go away. Sorry. Is that there's going to be a focus on how do we increase the membership. I don't know what it will look like yet, but that a modified membership fee has been suggested.
And it's
the suggestion is good.
Not for all the time either. It's just for a limited time, or if just for new members or something like that. It's an enticement.
Sale.
Say again?
A sale. Yep. Buy one, get one free, something. That's a good idea.
But again, the league is changing direction. We've got a new CEO who's enthusiastic about amateur radio. He actually knows what amateur radio is. I mean, he was so active that when he went down to Bon Air, he and some friends set up a contest station, realized that on that island, the hams did not have access to 60 meters, and they persuaded the government to grant those hams access to 60 meters. So he's extremely enthusiastic. He's got experience, like I said, at contesting and DXing, some experience with emerging communications. So the league has been, I think, to be fair, lethargic for at least the past 10 to 20 years. That's changing. It will take us time to make a major shift, but you're going to see evidence of it. Ideas, Lee, like you're talking about, how do we get more members? We discount the membership fee or do something else. All those ideas on the table, they have been discussed, but the final programs haven't been developed yet.
John, I know you have to go. I can pick up on that a little bit when
Okay.
talk about some of the things we've done. Guys, just FYI, some things we have tried. When we get back to Hamfest, you guys, for every new member you sign up through the club, you get a $15 rebate from that membership. What if you give people free access to the Hamfest if they sign up at the front door to be an ARRL member? They get a free access to Hamfest. You're going to make your money back through the $15 rebate that you would have gotten to them anyway. If we sit there, maybe people would see a value. Hey, look, I get into the Hamfest for free. The other thing we have tried is at the testing sessions, we have provided handouts, free books and materials and stuff at testing sessions. Somebody gets their new license and then it's right then and there. They say, hey, if you want to join the league, you can go ahead and you get a handbook or an operating book or something. You get some takeaways to offset the fee, so they don't really, they feel, hey, I'm paying $49, but hey, look, I'm getting a $30 or $40 book in return for it. And so we encourage them right then and there at the licensing when to do that also. So there are some ways that we can try to be a little bit more creative in getting people to sit there and join in. That's just two of the ideas that we've been bouncing around. I think would be a way we can be more proactive at the local level to do something, you know, in addition to anything we do at the national level.
And one of the ideas that Lee mentioned, which is the get into Hamfest free if you join, is it may actually be seen with the Greater Houston Hamfest. The organizers hold that Hamfest in March. They canceled it because of C-19. They are looking into holding the Greater Houston Hamfest in July, August, and September of this year, if there are enough vaccines out. But one of the ideas that they've talked about is the one that Lee and I have proposed, and that is that if they're going to hold it, that they do just what Lee mentioned. If you join, we'll pay for the person's access to the Hamfest. So we'll see how it works if they hold that Hamfest. If we don't do it with Houston, we'll probably do it in the spring of next year with one of the Hamfests to see how it works.
I know the guy at Ham Holiday, and I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, and let me give credit to Lee. That idea actually was Lee's originally.
Way to go, Lee.
So if it goes wrong, it is Lee's fault, folks.
That's it.
Okay, I'm going to apologize. I have to leave. Lee is, of course, free to stay and answer any questions. He's brighter than I am anyway. But I appreciate everyone letting us come. Anytime you want Lee or me to come and talk on any subject, we'll be happy to do it. Just ask. And with our email addresses, if you've got any concerns or questions, what's going on, ask. We'll answer any question we can. And again, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say also our call signs at ARRL.org will reach us also if you forget those.
Okay. Mark, Lee, Mark,
Thanks, John.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you,
Happy you
John.
came. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks for coming.
What's the contact information? Once again, if we sign up in the next 7 days?
Send an email to use my address, or if you send it to Lee, it'll work. Either one of us. All you need to do is put in the subject line, SCARS Renew, and then in the body of the email, give us name, address. We need the address to ship to you because we'll have to send you the door prize. So name, address, call sign, and that's it.
Thanks.
Again, if you can, renew through the club so the club gets the benefit.
Thank you very much, John. Have a
Okay.
great day and carry on. And Galen, it's yours.
Very good.